I was gonna make a video dedicated to talking about every album mentioned by What's the Dirt in his The Culture is Nonsense video. The way it would happen is that I would review each album that he brought up, give my thoughts briefly in the long form video, and then by the end of it, give my thoughts as to why people aren't paying that much attention to these specific albums. As I was listening to Boldy James and then through Busta Rhymes and Nems and stuff like that, I just found myself caring less and less because I ended up wanting to enjoy myself and listening to the music on my own time, and I would rather do that than to prove some dickhead wrong who is so obviously wrong. Especially considering how people already are on that person's ass proving that he's wrong. I've listened to most of these albums on my own time, and I'm going to continue listening to them. I think, if anything, this exposed me to a problem within hip-hop that, unfortunately, I felt like I was contributing to. The point that I'm trying to make is that I listened to these albums specifically because I wanted to prove somebody wrong as opposed to just enjoying the music. I clearly just wanted to review these albums for content and less about how much I enjoyed these albums. Like, if you want someone who is really into hip-hop to review these albums that your favorite music reviewer or some such couldn't get to, please check out Hip Hop History Buff. I found out about him through Mike Seatown, and this guy lives and breathes hip-hop. Like, I can't recommend it enough, and I think would do better justice to those albums than I ever could. So seriously, if you really want some new tastes, some new music, while getting it from somebody who's obviously not only in tune to the culture, but respects and understands its sensibilities and is culturally sensitive enough to understand what he's allowed to speak on and what he's not allowed to speak on, with an obvious love and passion for the art, please check him out. It was clear that Matt's intentions, it was basically to just shit on the culture. He cares about hip-hop and these albums about as much as he cares about Drake. So what's the point, right? And then it got me to realize that the reason why these artists are not getting as much attention as a Kendrick Lamar or a Clips isn't just because people don't care about them. It's more like they kind of can't, if that makes sense. Not in that they're not allowed to or they're too weak to or anything like that. It's just that with the lack of rollout these albums have been getting, along with their generally inaccessible nature due to the eccentricities of some of these rappers. Seriously, American Sweetheart by Nems is essentially fuck your life. Bing bong. The album. On top of the fact that the average person doesn't necessarily have the time to be digging for these albums, some of these albums, I think, by design, were made to be generally harder to find. And I don't know what the reasons are. Maybe they wanted to appeal to the more underground fans. Maybe they had a specific audience that they wanted to appeal to. Maybe they just wanted to feed their fan base. Maybe it was to meet a quota on their label contract or something. Maybe it was just an experiment. Who knows? And that's the thing. We don't really know why these albums were released other than to be digested to the general public. There's really no further point to make other than, hey, we made some rap music. Go ahead and listen to them if you want. Between that and Clips and Kendrick Lamar and Tyler the Creator, the rollout for these albums basically boils down to, yo, man, I got something to say. If you have things to say and you have intent within your music that is noticeable, not just from the rollout, but the way you deliver it, people will generally notice. Yes, it helps that these acts are very popular, but how did they get popular? Well, with, of course, the rollout, but within that rollout is a rapper screaming at the top of their lungs that they've got something to say. Don't let the fact that Clips makes drug anthems and violent songs fool you. On top of the lyricism, they've got songwriters. They got Pharrell on the beats. They have Kendrick Lamar as a feature. And don't let Tyler the Creator's statement about how Don't Tap the Glass isn't even that deep and how there's no real further meaning behind it. The intent itself is to get you to dance and have fun without this fear of being perceived. I think there is this intense desire within not just the music, but the rollout as well, that gets people to actively pay attention to you. Maybe that's why people think hip-hop is in an unhealthy place, especially with Gen Z, with much younger rappers having this deep-rooted fear of being perceived, and with old heads really not putting the younger generations on. If we want younger generations to get into more lyrical hip-hop, we're gonna have to put them on to older stuff, in a way where it feels like you're the cool older sibling putting your little sibling onto some pretty dope shit. Like, hey there, sport, I heard you were listening to the new Playboi Carti album. Want to hear the shit it was based on? How cool would it be if we just approached music that way all the time, while also giving younger people an option to say yes or no? And that's another reason why a lot of lyrical rappers aren't necessarily getting this much exposure, because no one's really putting them on. Whether it's because they want to remain insular or because they just wanted to put something out, we don't know. And that's why I'm pretty frustrated with Matt in that The Culture is Nonsense video. He doesn't put you on to these other rappers like someone who cares about the culture. Like I said, he hates the culture. And that's why I do have a bit of a hard time wanting to do these reviews, because I would much rather tell them how the album makes me feel as opposed to what I think about the technical aspects of it. Music to me is the greatest, most creative form of communication of all time. It transcends language barriers, cultural barriers, barriers of all kinds. Maybe, depending on who you ask, even physical barriers. But when you force somebody to commune with people, or you just force them to turn the other way because, oh, it's not to your liking, that causes music, hip-hop in particular, to become superficial, because all of a sudden there's an in crowd and there is an out crowd. It's no longer setting up boundaries for people within cultures. It's become less like that and more like a popularity contest. It causes the youth to become utterly lost, and it causes lyrical rappers to have nowhere to go. People have this image of lyrical hip-hop as just essentially jazz rap or boom bap like Griselda. There's a wide world of music that people are just not being exposed to, the youth especially, because they're not being set up to it. Now, I can personally blame the internet, but also the previous generations for not putting the youth on, and the youth for being terminally online and using the internet as a supplement for real life. In listening to the albums Matt mentioned, I felt like I was forcing myself to listen to them because I had to make a video, and in a way I felt like I was contributing to a problem. In that I wanted to be performative and show that, oh, I care about hip-hop, and I'm gonna prove it by reviewing all these albums brought up by some racist white guy, instead of just listening to them for the joy of listening to music. Why do I have to prove that I care? I love the genre of music that I listen to already. I don't give a fuck if you give a fuck. And with that, I also want to be the cool older brother that puts the young kids on to whatever I'm listening to, and allow them the option of deciding whether or not they want to listen to it. I take great joy in spurging out over my passion for music rather than just being a stick in the mud that tells you why this is important, why you should listen to it. That being said, of course, there are certain things that are important if you want to get the full picture, but it should be done in a way where it comes from a place of love and not from a place of cold intellectualism. Love really is its own intellectual, and if you allow that love to speak for itself, people will take care to notice. People will pay attention to what you're listening to and to what you're putting out. That, I think, is a healthy approach to hip-hop. Putting yourself out there, being yourself, having fun, loving the life you live, and living the life you love. That's words to live by. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really genuinely do appreciate you all. As I grow this channel, I also want to talk about a bunch of other stuff that scratches my autistic brain. Stuff like VTubing, music of course, more hip-hop. I might even do some small videos like doing genre deep dives, family trees, maybe even talking about important moments in music. I also want to get more into like Warframe content. I'm also gonna start up a second channel dedicated to commentary and reactions. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of making those, but hey, you gotta grow your videos. Plus, I think it would be a lot of fun to like just animate more of my PNG tuber model. Definitely gotta get into more streaming. I'm gonna start up on YouTube before I start up on Twitch, because the discoverability rate on YouTube is much better. Also anime. I don't watch a whole lot of anime these days. I know a bunch of anime, but I don't necessarily watch them all that much, and I need to remedy that. How am I gonna be a VTuber and I don't get into anime? That's like one of the cornerstones of being a VTuber. That's my goal, is to be a music-related VTuber. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Or don't. I'm not your mom.